This is a peek into Stephenie Meyer's twisted mind. Chapter 1, Mormon Vampires. As we all know, Stephenie Meyer, known Mormon, and this fact you can definitely see in her world building, so I want to talk first about her vampire biology that she comes up with. And I do use the term biology very loosely. In the Twilight verse, vampires have what Stephenie calls venom-based bodies. So her direct quote is that the vampire system contains many venom-based fluids, but only their saliva is venomous. This is why in the books, Edward and Bella can only kiss closed mouth, because if Edward gets his saliva in Bella, she will die. Obviously they changed this for the movie. I don't know what venom-based means, even though I do have a biology degree. So because of these venom-based fluids, there are no vampires of color, because during the transformation, venom leaches all the melanin from like their skin cells. So regardless of the vampire's original ethnicity, they will be white. Wait, you might say, isn't there a black vampire in the movies? And you'd be right. But this was actually, again, Stephenie Meyer's best efforts. She allegedly didn't even want any of Bella's friends to not be white. And then the director, Catherine Hardwicke, her savior, she was like, no, you have to have people of color in the movie. And so she was somehow able to convince her to cast Ed Gathegi as Laurent by reminding her that in the book she had described him as olive skin toned. And so that was the only way she was able to convince Stephenie to have a vampire of color. In less heavy lore, the Twilight vampires' eye color actually reflects their diet. When a vampire chooses a vegetarian diet, like the Cullens, meaning they don't drink blood, they get gold eyes. If a vampire has black eyes, it means that they're hungry. That's why Edward's eyes change color in the movie, from his level of hunger. And then red eyes means either they do feed on humans or they were just recently turned. So clearly I eat humans. And you might say, why don't they wear contacts instead of making up lame excuses?
Yeah, I know, it's the fluorescence.
And Stephenie has an answer for this, and that's because the fluids in their eyes are venom based, and that would mean that the contacts would dissolve in just a couple hours. Duh. And one of Stephenie's more boring design choices for her vampires, she decides that vampires don't have fangs in the Twilight verse. Instead, they have regular looking teeth, but that are unbreakable and razor sharp. Vampire psychology. In an obvious attempt to make Edward look like less of a creep, Stephenie tells us that vampires do not develop mentally past the age at which they were turned, which, to be fair, kind of explains why Edward is so emo even after 104 years. Speaking of character traits, a vampire's extra gifts, like Edward's ability to read minds, apparently come from amplified key personality traits that they had during life. I want you to put a pin in this for later, because it will make less sense the more we go on. Let's talk about the vamp lifestyle. We can't talk about Twilight vampires without talking about the covens. So typically, according to Stephenie, a coven is made up of just 2 mated members. So just a regular couple, Steph? Okay. And like swans, Mormon vampires do mate for life. If a vampire chooses the vegetarian diet, the Cullen diet if you will, then their inherent competitive vampire instinct goes away and they gain the ability to form platonic ties. So if you want to have besties, if you want to have friends, you need to be on that Cullen diet. In this video, I will be going over the Cullens and their backstories, and I will be going in chronological order of when Carlisle turned them, starting first with Daddy Cullen himself. Let's start off with the fact that Carlisle is 23 years old, canonically, with 5 adopted teenagers and a full-fledged medical career. Carlisle was born in 1640s London, His dad was this like evil Anglican pastor who led crusades against the supernatural. He wasn't very good at it, so like he mostly just ended up killing a lot of innocent people, kind of Catholic crusade style. When Carlisle's dad gets too old to keep up these crusade shenanigans, Carlisle takes over. He does actually find real vampires. The vampires that Carlisle finds live in the London sewers. And during a raid, Carlisle gets bitten, and since he knows his dad would never accept him, he hides in a potato cellar for 3 days. And then when he's fully turned, he's horrified at what he's become, right? And so he tries to himself, right? Like every way possible. Throws off the cliff, fire, everything. Doesn't work. And then he realizes he can live off animal blood instead of just humans. And so he's like, okay, then I guess I won't myself. For the next 2 centuries, Carlisle holds up and studies everything he can. He just becomes a scholar. A gentleman and a scholar, if you will. Eventually he becomes a doctor. While studying in Italy, I don't know what he was doing in Italy, he runs into the Volturi. He hangs out with them for like 20 years. And he's like, I don't really like these guys, because you know, they like eat humans and they're kind of evil. But all the other vampires are not smart enough for him. So he hangs out with the Volturi because they're cultured, I guess. So he just hangs around them for 20 years, and then he decides that he's gonna go to the New World, where he then starts collecting family members like Pokemon, and that's what we're getting into next. Also, I would be neglectful if I did not mention Carlisle's resemblance to Joseph Smith of Mormon fame. So here you can see, I think you can see the resemblance, right? Okay, next we have my main man, Edward. So Edward was born on June 20th of 1901, a Gemini, in Chicago, and he was turned at age 17. His dad was like well-off lawyer who was absent most of the time. But got him into his like fancy private schools and stuff and music lessons, which honestly only partly explains Edward's superiority complex. That for some fuck-ass reason, Edward really wants to become a soldier in World War I. Clearly that didn't work out. In 1918, him and his parents get the Spanish flu. Womp womp. His dad dies pretty soon after this, which just leaves Edward and his mom, right? Edward was a real mama's boy. So Edward and his mom are at the hospital. Carlisle works at this hospital. He's treating them. When Edward's mom realizes that she is, you know, about to kick it, she begs Carlisle to save him by whatever means necessary. Somehow she has picked up that Carlisle is like special in some way, and she is like, you gotta save my son, you gotta save my baby boy. Like Carlisle is like, okay. She dies, and then he turns Edward to be his vampire son. After becoming a vampire, Edward gains the ability to read minds. And you might be like, what personality trait would give you the ability to read minds? To that I would say, don't think about it. At some point, early vampirehood, Edward uses his ability to enter a Batman era, where he rebels against Carlisle's special diet and decides to eat only bad humans. Dexter style, if you will. His mind reading, and he will only kill humans that he knows are bad, like rapists and like stealers. Eventually Edward comes back, prodigal son returns, he goes back to the vegetarian lifestyle, and almond mom Carlisle is happy. During his century of immortality, Edward has gotten 2 medical degrees and graduate degrees in literature, math, law, mechanical engineering, several languages, art history, and international business. I will be talking about all the degrees that all the Cullen family members have amassed. So Esme is born in 1895 in Columbus, Ohio. She's turned when she's 26. Her story starts when she is 16. She falls out of a tree and breaks her leg. Local doctor, who happens to be Carlisle, fixes her leg, and Esme is like, this is the man I want to marry. So taken by how handsome and kind that Carlisle is that she never forgets him. And so she wanted to be a school teacher. At 22, her parents are like, no, you need to marry this guy named Charles Evanson. Surprise, turns out to be an abusive asshole. Luckily, he gets drafted into World War I. Unfortunately, he comes back. Once he's back, Esme finds out that she's pregnant, so she runs away to live with her cousin. Charles, the shitty husband, tracks her down, and so she runs away again to another town where she pretends to be a war widow and becomes a school teacher, getting to live her dream. And then when she finally has her baby, it passes away 2 days later from lung fever. Because, I don't know, I guess Stephanie can't let her have fucking anything. Due to her distress, Esme attempts suicide by jumping off a cliff. So when she's found, she's taken to the local hospital where apparently, Dr. Carlisle is working. And he immediately is like, that's the 16-year-old. I fixed her leg before.
Bombastic side eye.
Okay. And he decides to save her by turning her. No, he doesn't ask her. Like, she just is going to become a vampire whether she wants to or not. When she wakes up, she's like super happy with the deal. She's like, oh fuck yeah. My childhood crush has turned me into a vampire. This is great. So she's apparently super happy with the way things have turned out. And so eventually they fall in love and they get married. You might be like, oh, like what degrees, like what cool things has Esme gotten to do in her immortal life? None. She doesn't go to school. She doesn't get degrees because she is just a maternal figure. Duh. Why would she need to go to school? Duh. She's in the kitchen, barefoot. Everyone knows maternal figures don't get to have it. On to a fan favorite, Alice. You might want to like buckle in because her backstory is definitely the craziest, most complex, batshit crazy rides that I was taking on during this research journey. Wait till you find out who pops up in her story. You would never guess what character pops up in her story. Alice is born in 1901, Mississippi, and she is eventually turned at age 18. Her dad was a jeweler and a pearl trader, and so he was on the road a lot. Okay, so she stayed with her mom and her sister at home. Alice has always had these visions, right? Even when she was a kid, which, you know, begs the question, in the Twilight verse, do humans have supernatural powers? Maybe. Stephanie will not discuss this any further. One day, Alice has a vision of her mom getting brutally murdered in the woods. And so she tells her mom, and she's like, please don't go out. You know, like, this is what's gonna happen. I had a vision of it. And because Alice's visions have come true in the past, her mom listens to her and is like, okay, I won't go out. When Alice's dad finds out, he's like, this is ridiculous. Like, you're listening to a child. The visions are not real. And so Alice's mom is like, okay, and you know, she starts going out as normal. She gets murdered. Boom, she's murdered. She didn't listen to Alice. However, her death is like ruled as accidental. Alice is like, no, it wasn't accidental. But she gets shut down because she's a woman. So Alice's dad then gets remarried to a blonde rich lady who isn't very nice to Alice or her sister in typical stepmom fashion. And eventually, Alice has this vision of her dad being the one who put a hit out on her mom. Why Alice doesn't have this vision until after it's happened and until this point, I don't know. And we won't know. We never find out what his motivation for this was, so don't even ask. So she tries to tell the town marshal, but her dad is a step ahead of her and he's already told everyone in town that she is crazy. And so no one listens to her and she is sent to the loony bin. In this asylum, she gets her head shaved, which is why she has short hair, and she receives electroshock therapy. There's a small problem with that though. Electroshock therapy had not been invented. Electroshock therapy was invented in Italy in 1938, and it is 1920 in Mississippi. As an after effect of the electroshock therapy, Alice gets amnesia, which was a side effect of electroshock therapy. But don't worry. Stephanie's like, no, like, this is a good thing. This is really good that happened to her because she forgot all the bad stuff that happened to her and now she can be happy again. She said, and I quote, "This allowed her naturally cheerful and humorous disposition to return." Surprise, surprise, there's a vampire working a day job in the asylum, in the loony bin. We never get any information about him. We don't get his name. We don't know anything about his backstory. You don't need to know it, because it doesn't exist. And so he really likes Alice, because, like, who wouldn't? This vampire who works a day job at the asylum really likes Alice. I'm gonna take care of you. This is where, like, this story really goes off the rails. James! Yeah, James from the first movie, from the villain from the first movie, from the first book. This James sniffs her ass out from 2 towns away, okay? And he's like, that smells so good. I'm gonna hunt her down. Yes, this is the same James from the first Twilight movie / book. The one who likes to wear an open army jacket with nothing underneath. Because Alice has these, like, magical powers, she has a vision of James coming for her. And so she tells her little vampire loony bin buddy about this. He decides that the only way that he can protect her is to turn her into a vampire. That's what he does. And then Alice runs away, she gets away, and her vampire bestie gets marked by James. And that's the end of his story. We don't know anything else. Apparently, the transformation had the same effect as the electroshock therapy, and Alice loses all her memories again. So she remembers none of this. She doesn't remember James, she doesn't remember her vampire bestie in the loony bin, she doesn't remember any of this. Once she's a vampire, Alice has visions of Jasper and the Cullens, and so she takes steps to make sure that happens. In her immortal life, Alice gets degrees in fashion design and international business. Also, you know how the Cullens are, like, super, super loaded, like super rich? Part of the reason is from Alice using her gift to do insider trading in the stock market. Yeah, Alice uses her psychic powers to game the stock market. I have a really bad confession to make. It's really hard. Jasper was my crush when I was reading and watching these movies when I was a child. In my defense, I was 9, but I should have known better. So let's get into it. Jasper was born in 1844 in Texas, and he was turned at age 19. I truly have racked my brain for a reason as to, like, why Stephanie decided that this was Jasper's backstory. I haven't come up with anything other than she's racist, unfortunately. So Jasper lies about his age to volunteer to join the Confederate Army. And he's just, like, so good at it. He's just, like, the best to ever do it. He's just so good at racism that he becomes the youngest major in the Confederate Army. He eventually meets these 3 female vampires who form the Mexican Coven. I will be discussing them in another video. Don't think I would ever forget about my people, the Mexican Coven. The gist is that the Mexican Coven has just lost territory in, like, these, like, vampire wars. And Maria, the sexy Latina vampire lady leader of the Mexican Coven, is hoping to get it back by creating a army of newborn vampires. So she sees Jasper, she chooses him because she's like, okay, he's in the army, he's, like, clearly very good at this, and she turns him. Once she realizes that Jasper's gift is influencing other people's emotions, she decides to make him the commander of her army. His job is to kill vampires that are no longer useful to the army. So, like, once they stop being newborns, he, like, them because he's, like, just not as powerful and moldable for the army, I guess. This actually makes him really sad, though, because he's an empath. I guess he just isn't an empath when it comes to black people, though, for some reason. The reason is racism. So eventually he escapes the evil, sexy Latina vampire, Maria. Don't know why you would escape that. To be on his own. Eventually, Alice finds him in 1948 in a diner, of all places. She is waiting. She knows he's going to go to this diner, so she just goes in there, waits for him, and she's like, "Hi, I love you. And Jasper's like, okay. And they get together. Together they find the Cullens and join them. For some reason that I don't quite understand, maybe it's just because he's antisocial, but Jasper doesn't like fuck with the Cullens as much as the rest of them do. So he just mostly hangs around for the diet, the lifestyle diet, and to make Alice happy. According to lore, Jasper sticks to the vegetarian lifestyle even though it's really hard for him because he can't handle killing people because he's an empath, guys. He's an empath. And he's racist. His immortal life, Jasper gets degrees in philosophy and history. I bet he really likes the Lost Cause history. You know what I mean. Finally, we get to my girl Bella. Bella is born September 13th of 1987 in Forks. Her parents get a divorce when she is 3 months old, and her mom, Renee, takes her to live in California and later Arizona. Don't worry, I will be getting into Charlie and Renee's backstory in another video because it is also crazy. But she's forced to grow up really quickly because Renee really is irresponsible mom with severely untreated ADHD. So Bella has to take over the household tasks. Like basically she's parentified really early, even though she doesn't have siblings. Like she parents her mom. Overall, we know that Bella was a quiet kid and she really liked reading, did well in school, and she wanted to be a teacher one day. And of course she was also extraordinarily clumsy. And I know a lot of people make fun of that, but as someone with a connective tissue disorder, I understand, girl. I get you, girl. I'm right there with you. Anyways, Renee eventually, she remarries a minor league baseball player, and she decides to follow him around in his minor league baseball career, as if she doesn't have a teenage daughter that needs her. Bella's selfless that she's like, no mom, like just go, like I'll just go live with dad. Though she like barely knows him, hasn't seen him that much. So she moves to Forks. The rest is history. Of course, I can't ignore the fact that Bella is most definitely a self-insert character for Stephenie Meyer. But honestly, I would do the same thing if I was writing vampire fantasy novels. So, can't really blame her. Here you can see that Bella's description is definitely based on what Stephenie looks like, in my opinion. I really hope that in her immortal life, Bella gets to get her degree in education and maybe even get to be a teacher the way that she wanted. But then again, she is a mom, so Stephenie Meyer might decide that she, like Esme, does not get to have any other aspirations. We'll see. And last but certainly not least, Renesmee, Jacob's child bride. I have a confession to make though. I don't hate the name Renesmee. I know, it's probably my hottest Twilight take, is that I don't hate the name Renesmee.
Hey guys, so I'm editing and I just got to the part where I'm talking about Renesmee's name, and I just noticed that her middle name is Carly. Carly as in like Charlie plus Carlisle. I can't believe I didn't notice this before. Yeah. Renesmee's full name is Renee plus Esme plus Carlisle plus Charlie.
Canonically, Renesmee is born September 11th of 2006. I don't know why Stephenie Meyer decided to make her born on 9/11, but she did. Let's start with the fact that Renesmee is a hybrid. She's half human, half vampire. I want to go over what Stephenie tells us about hybrids. 1. They can only be created by a human mother and a vampire father because female vampires cannot get pregnant. 2. To be born, they have to claw and bite their way out of their mom's womb. Bella is the only hybrid mother to have survived through a hybrid birth. 3. There are 4 other hybrids in existence, and we will be getting into them in another video because their existence is a whole nother rabbit hole. 4. Hybrids have the mental capacity of an adult by the time they are born. They are literally fully conscious baby.
Who wants to go to the Four Seasons Orlando?
I want to note, Jacob does not know this, so the whole imprinting thing is still weird. 5. Hybrids age super rapidly, and reach physical maturity at 4 years old. So technically, Jacob only has to wait 4 years. Don't love that. 6, hybrids can eat blood and regular food, but apparently they prefer blood. Ew. Number 7, Stephanie decided to include the fact that hybrids have an elevated body temperature of 105 degrees Fahrenheit, which doesn't really make any sense because vampires are cold and humans are normal temperature, so why they would be hotter doesn't really make any sense. Renesmee's special ability is that she's able to show her thoughts to other people through touch, which is how she's able to basically communicate with everyone even before she can talk. Creepy, I know. And I cannot not mention this. The most bizarre Mormon pro-life justification I have ever encountered is that the reason that Jacob is drawn to Bella is because this whole time the egg that was going to become Renesmee was in Bella's womb. And that's why Jacob was so obsessed with Bella. Not because he loved her or anything, but because the little unfertilized egg that was to be Renesmee was in Bella's womb, and I guess that was enough to drive Jacob to the brink of madness. Just let that sink in. And that's all the Twilight lore I have for this video. But if you're still here, I do want to say thank you so much for watching. I really can't explain how much it means to me that someone would watch my video. I'm planning to make 2 more videos following this one about vampire covens and one about the werewolves, which is also wild. Thanks for watching, and comment what you think is the most unhinged thing Stephanie wrote in her books.